Today, I am going to be talking about bodhicitta, which has two aspects, absolute or ultimate bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. And they're really basic to the whole teachings of the Buddha. Starting with absolute bodhicitta. Absolute bodhicitta is primordial wisdom. It is the ultimate nature of mind. It is beyond conception. It's beyond description. It's beyond good and bad. It's our essence, you might say. It's the source of our being, the source of our compassion, our love, our wisdom, and so much. When Lama Karma was here, he would request that we, before he would begin his teaching, do the best that we can to rest in kind of a non-conceptual awareness or the ultimate bodhicitta. And then after that, think about compassion a little bit. So this is our essence, our very nature. You could call it Buddha nature too. I was asked a question recently about where is karma stored? And well, karma is stored in our eighth consciousness, which is part of the relative world. And in absolute mind, primordial mind, there is no storage of karma. You're beyond that. So this is absolute bodhicitta. Here are some more ways to describe it. It is resting in an open, empty, free, spacious, luminous clarity of mind. The word luminous is important. If you make this comparison, the sun is luminous, the moon reflects. The moon reflects the light from the sun. And so this ultimate bodhicitta is luminous. It's not reflecting awareness from some other source, that it's coming from within. Although in the ultimate, there is no within and outside of. It's everywhere and nowhere because it's beyond location. So we have this vast, open, limitless wisdom mind. This is the ultimate. I also like to use this as an example of what does having our mind being limitless, what does that mean? Well, let's look at it in terms of confusion. You can have a person that, like Elon Musk, that is worth $300 billion. And he still wants more because it's limitless how much desire you can have, how much you can desire. You could have a dictator control, you might say, half the world and want to control the whole world and maybe even succeed in controlling the whole world. But even that wouldn't be enough because the desire of mind is limitless, because mind is limitless. Now, if we look at this in a positive manner, I'm kind of talking about a negative manner, but the same is true, that the amount of love that a person can have for others is limitless. The amount of compassion is limitless. The amount of wisdom, the spaciousness, the openness of mind all of this is limitless. Now, this is the ultimate. In the 7 points of mind training, at the beginning, they talk about ultimate bodhicitta. And they talk about it in the beginning because if you are going to be practicing developing relative bodhicitta, compassion for all beings, it agitates our minds. So you start out by resting the best that you can in ultimate bodhicitta. It doesn't work the other way around, where first you work on developing relative bodhicitta and then you work on ultimate bodhicitta. I think we all know that our minds can be quite busy, and when we get involved in practices like Tonglen, taking on the suffering of other beings, blaming our ego and attachment to our ego for problems that we face in the world, it can cause our mind to have lots of thoughts and become wild. But if we can learn how to rest, even if it's briefly, in ultimate bodhicitta, this is really important. I brought up an experience that I had in a teaching I gave yesterday. And I think this is a good time to bring this up. I like to tell stories. But this is the importance of being able to let go of thoughts and just taking a break and settling down. And one night, it was as usual, I was here alone and I heard some noises down in my cellar, things being knocked over and so forth. And so I opened up the door, which is in the kitchen that goes down to the cellar, to see what's going on down there. And as soon as I opened up the door, I knew what was going on down there. It was a skunk. And I knew that if the skunk was down there, he was not going to get out by himself. He would not get out the way he got in because he obviously had gone in through the crawl space and then fallen into the cellar. So I decided this is the time to shut the door, stay upstairs, and just kind of take it easy for a little while, calm down. Don't do anything rash. In fact, I think it would be wonderful when we go through our daily lives, when we, you might say, run into a metaphorical skunk in our lives, that somehow or another we would realize, it is time to back off rather than dive in and do things that we later regret. But anyway, so I thought, I of course realized that I'm going to have to do something, that he's not going to get him, or she is not going to get themselves out of there. And I eventually called up a friend who was a trapper and talked to him about this, and he did not give me any really good answers. Because even if you put a trap down there and you trap the skunk, well, still you've got to carry it upstairs and out of the house. So after that, suddenly I heard another sound, and it was scratching on the door to the cellar. That the skunk had walked up the stairs and was scratching on the door, wanting to get into the kitchen. So then I developed a plan, and it was that the first thing I did is put my dog in an outbuilding and close the door so he would not get involved. I did not want a dog chasing a skunk in my house. And then there was a back porch on the house at this time. Now I've got this addition and entryway, but there was a back porch there, and I just opened the back porch door, kept and propped it open, and then I have the door in the kitchen to the cellar, and then right next to it, a door that goes at that time to the back porch. So all I needed to do was get that skunk to go from the cellar door to the door next to it, going to the back porch. And I took out the hinge pins of two interior doors in the house, and you take out the hinge pins, the door comes off of the wall. And I used them as, you might say, fences. A farmer would call them gates. So I had openings here, and then the other side, I had these doors that were 30 inches high. Then I opened up the door to the cellar and I looked down and there was the skunk. And so I stomped on the first step enough to get his attention. And for some reason or another, he decided to walk up the stairs towards me. And so then I got down over the other side of the doors and crouched down. And about 4 or 5 minutes later, I had enough courage to get up and look and see, and the skunk was gone. By being calm, you start giving yourself some space. You're giving yourself for some opportunity to see possibilities as opposed to just, you might say, panicking, doing things that you'll later regret. So I thought it was a great metaphor for how meditation can help us and how just resting in this absolute bodhicitta or approximating resting in absolute bodhicitta. Basically, the slogans in the 7 points of mind training are very simple. So I'm going to go over them here briefly. The first one is regard all phenomena as dreams. I'm sure you have all heard this before, but it does not talk about emptiness, by the way. It's more experiential here. Emptiness is a concept. And here it just regard all phenomena as dreams, that they are insubstantial, that the world is a bit like a mirage, a magical illusion. I like this metaphor, an echo, like reflection on water. So you start with this when you are working on meditating on absolute bodhicitta, or our Buddha nature, if you would like. There is this illusion aspect to it. Again, if it wasn't an illusion, how can we have so many different versions of reality? There certainly are a lot of versions of what is real right now. And then the next one, of course, is to examine the nature of unborn awareness. So just look at the non-substantiality of mind itself. I remember many, many years ago, I was at KTD, and at that time you roomed in the old building. I think I had like 5 roommates one time, and one of them said, kind of in a non-serious way, Oh, I looked at the nature of my mind and saw nothing. And I said, well, who's looking? And it's kind of this idea of the nature of unborn awareness. What is it? Who's looking? What is this awareness that has this luminous quality? And then the next slogan is then, even the remedy is free to self-liberate. So after examining and looking at the nature, you have to let go of that too. And then, of course, the next one is rest in the natural state, the basis of all. So when you let go of the remedy, then you have this awareness and rest in it. The closest thing that I can think of in my experience to this is I am asleep at night and it's out here in the country, it's black. There's not a whole lot of light. There's no street lights. There's not traffic, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm awakened by a noise. And so I'm not sure what it is. If it was the donkeys, I'd know what it was. But this was something that was not the donkeys. And I'm trying to, you might say, focus in on this noise. And I'm really focusing, listening, except there's nothing to listen to. The noise did not repeat itself. This is kind of resting in that natural state where you're aware, there's awareness, but you don't have this awareness of an object. It's just awareness. That's the best that I can do in terms of experiencing this. Maybe you can relate to this yourself in some way or another. So then the last slogan is, in post-meditation, be a child of illusion, which is to try to maintain this perspective of the insubstantial nature of things in our everyday activities. So this is about absolute bodhicitta and how to develop an experience of it. And of course, if you actually have that experience, that would be the equivalent of the path of seeing. You have 5 paths, and this would be the equivalent of the path of seeing of the first bhumi, of the 11 bhumis, the 11th one being a fully enlightened Buddha. So this is not something that is commonly experienced. Also, close to it is this I'm trying to think of the exact term. It's shamatha, but without an object, without focusing on an object. It's just resting in awareness. So that is about the absolute bodhicitta. Now, a relative bodhicitta is about compassion, and it is compassion for all beings, compassion for others, compassion for ourselves. There is in many of the teachings and the prayers the 2 benefits. So by having compassion, you're benefiting others and you're benefiting yourself. Needless to say, when you're going through the world in your post-meditation, it really helps to maintain this idea of being a child of illusion. Because, again, we're going to run into a lot of skunks. Or maybe some other animals that, like a porcupine. I have had a deer that has been hanging around the yard. I think it's my yard is part of its territory now. I see it multiple times every day if I am here. I took pictures of it this morning and posted it on my Facebook page. I think at one time, because I heard these noises, that it was up on my deck, which is getting pretty darn close to the house. If I'd open the door, maybe it'd come in, but I don't want a deer in the house any more than I want a skunk. The point is that as we go through our daily lives, we just run into things that can upset us, and we run into situations where we just see that there is so much suffering in the world, whether it be a relative of ours, a brother dying, a friend dying. I talked to a friend of mine last night, and he had been on vacation for a couple of weeks, among other things, visiting friends and relatives. And he's close to my age, and it was visiting one person after another that was going through medical problems. This is the nature of samsara, as old age, sickness, and of course, eventually death. If we can have this child of illusion kind of basis as we're hearing all of these things and experiencing them ourselves, that we can maintain compassion for a much wider group of people. We're not perfect. We can't even maintain compassion for ourselves all the time. And compassion for ourselves is very different than self-indulgent. Self-indulgent is not compassion at all. It actually just leads to more suffering. If you keep getting your way over and over and over again, there's no limit to desire. There's no limit to wanting your way all the time. If you're not happy before you get what you want, you won't be happy for long after you get what you want. You might not even be happy at all after you get what you want. So we need to have compassion for ourselves. We need to have compassion for other beings. It's an expression of our ultimate nature. And if we are going to attain the goal, which is becoming a completely enlightened Buddha, we need to have it too. And if we're going to be a bodhisattva, we're going to have compassion and loving kindness for all beings. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, well, I'll become enlightened, and then when I'm enlightened, I will be able to have all these tools to work with my neurosis, my ego, and working with difficult people. So I need to become enlightened before I can do any of that. And of course, with that attitude, you're not going to get anywhere. But it sounds good if you are looking for excuses. So basically, with the relative bodhicitta, it's very, very important to keep this in mind. The relative is not separate from the ultimate, and this can be difficult to understand. In a way, the relative is an expression of the ultimate, and the ultimate, in a way, is the flip side of the relative. They're not two separate things, but they're two different ways of manifesting. There was a question about these slogans on ultimate bodhicitta. The question specifically was the slogan, examine the nature of unborn awareness. So I'm going to go into this in more depth. I will admit that I went over it pretty quickly. So previously, we've examined the insubstantiality or the non-substantiality of the phenomenal world. Now we're looking at mind itself, its non-substantiality. Mind, of course, is beyond the material world. That's why it's unborn. It's not an idea. It's not a sensation. It's not even an experience. It is a vast spaciousness and luminous clarity. And clarity is not a thing. That would be like saying unobstructed has an obstruction in it. So we want to just examine the mind and try to find this unborn awareness, this innate wisdom. And then this wisdom and ultimate reality, are they the same? Are they different? And reality, the way at least a Kagyu would look at them, is that they're like two sides of a coin. Of course, a non-existent coin, but they are not different. They're not separate. It's just different ways of looking, analyzing, and so forth. This is a quote by Jamgon Khantrul, the great. By examining and investigating the mind, you should come to a precise and certain understanding of the nature of awareness, which has no origin, location, or cessation. End quote. So that is the goal, you might say, of examining the nature of unborn awareness, coming to that conclusion. Here is my own Western analysis, and that is, if unborn awareness has location, well, how do we in the West determine location? We do it on the basis of comparison. Well, first of all, you could just go to your GPS and it tells you where you are. But you're located on a map. You're located in a particular area. You're located on the Earth. So the Earth is located in a certain place in the solar system. And that is then in a certain galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy is located in certain place in the universe, and so on. But the point is, it's all based on substance. And if the substance is an illusion that it has solidity, where is mind? Well, they say it has no beginning, it has no end, it has no center, it has no fringe. That's what is being talked about here. And the traditional way of analysis of looking at the phenomenal world, is it real or not, is basically to take it apart into pieces. And using Western analysis combined with Buddhist analysis, well, I've got a hand here, and it's got a thumb, and it's got 4 fingers, and it's got joints and fingernails and skin, and underneath that is muscle, blood, bone, and so forth. And then all of that can be divided up into chemical compounds and tissue, and then atoms. And then you can divide atoms up into various subatomic particles, and you can divide that up into smaller pieces, and then you get things like, I don't have much of an idea about, but string theory. And they find that there's nothing there. So take your pick how you want to look at it, but we assume that there is something there, that it's solid, it's permanent, it's real. This is what the analysis is getting at, to really go beyond the kinds of simplified assumptions that we have been making our whole life and everybody else is making about our minds and how we perceive things and what we perceive. Very simply, we do not determine reality democratically. Reality is what the most people believe. That would be absurd. Anyway, so this is examining the unborn awareness and examining outer phenomena. Quote, if I can find it here again, by examining and investigating the mind, you should come to a precise and certain understanding of the nature of awareness, which has no origin, location, or cessation. And I'll tell you what I will do. I will put this in the chat if I can figure out how to do that.
Second question was really my first question. Like, so after and I'm glad you clarified this, looking at the nature of unborn awareness, but then the next one, even the remedy is free to self-liberate, the idea of letting go of the looker.
Yeah, letting go of this idea that, oh, yeah, I have examined and have come to this conclusion. Well, even the conclusion is conceptual. So you have to let go of it too. You're still, you might say, in a box.